The Galactic Council Chamber was the largest room Park Do-hyun had ever seen. It was built inside a hollowed asteroid, floating in the neutral space between star systems. The ceiling rose so high that clouds actually formed near the top. Thousands of seats curved around the central platform, and in those seats sat representatives from over 200 different species. Do-hyun sat in the human section, which was small compared to the older races. Humanity had only been part of the galactic community for 60 years. They were still considered newcomers. Children, really, in the eyes of species that had traveled between stars for thousands of years. But today, every eye in that massive chamber was focused on the human delegation. And not because of anything humans had done wrong. No, they were staring at the two figures standing behind Do-hyun's chair. The Kirathi were terrifying to look at. Commander Ren stood 7 feet tall, her body covered in dark green scales that shifted color slightly when she moved. Her arms were thick with muscle, and her hands ended in claws that could tear through metal. Her face was angular, with a short snout filled with sharp teeth. Yellow eyes watched the crowd with the calm patience of a predator who knew she was the most dangerous thing in any room she entered. Her companion, a male Kirathi named Keth, was even larger. He stood with his arms crossed, his tail slowly sweeping the floor behind him. The Kirathi were known throughout the galaxy as one of the most feared warrior species. They had conquered dozens of worlds before the Galactic Council convinced them to stop. Even now, centuries later, other species crossed the street to avoid them. And yet here they were, standing guard behind a human diplomat, ready to die for him if necessary. This was the question that had brought the emergency session together. Ambassador Tova of the Velashi Collective rose from her seat. The Velashi were made of living crystal, their bodies shimmering with internal light. They were one of the founding members of the council, ancient and proud. Tova's form flickered with purple light, which Do-hyun knew meant she was annoyed. "We have called this session to address an anomaly," Tova said. Her voice rang through the chamber like struck glass. "For 15 years, we have observed a disturbing pattern. The Kirathi, one of the most dangerous species in known space, have attached themselves to humanity. They serve as guards, protectors, and companions to human diplomats, traders, and explorers." She turned her crystalline head toward Do-hyun. "We demand an explanation." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Do-hyun remained calm. He had expected this. Honestly, he was surprised it had taken them this long to ask. "What is there to explain?" he asked. His voice was quiet, but the chamber's acoustics carried it to every seat. "The Kirathi choose to work with us. That is their right. Their right?" Tova's light pulsed brighter. "The Kirathi have never served anyone. They have never allied themselves with another species in this way. They are conquerors, not bodyguards. What leverage do humans hold over them? None. What threats have you made? None. What secrets do you possess that force their compliance?" Do-hyun smiled slightly. "Ambassador, I think you misunderstand the situation. The Kirathi are not forced to do anything. They choose to stand with us. Impossible." This came from another section of the chamber. Ambassador Greel of the Makari Trade Federation slithered forward. The Makari resembled giant slugs, their bodies leaving trails of slime wherever they went. They were known for their cunning and their greed. The Kirathi respect only strength. Humans are weak, soft. You have no natural weapons, no armor, no venom. By all logic, the Kirathi should view you as prey, not partners. Do-hyun glanced back at Ren. She had not moved, but her yellow eyes now focused on Greel with an intensity that made the Makari shrink back slightly. "Would you like to answer that, Commander?" Do-hyun asked. Ren stepped forward. The sound of her clawed feet on the stone floor echoed through the suddenly silent chamber. She moved past Do-hyun and stood at the edge of the central platform, looking up at the assembled representatives. "You measure strength in strange ways," she said. Her voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. "You count teeth and claws. You measure muscle and speed. By these measures, yes, humans are weak." She paused, letting the silence stretch. "You are fools." The chamber erupted in protest. Dozens of species shouted their outrage at being insulted. But Ren simply stood there, waiting. Eventually, the noise died down. Even the most offended ambassadors wanted to hear what she would say next. "I was young when I first met a human," Ren continued. "Barely an adult by Kirathi standards. My people were dying. A plague was destroying us, killing millions. The Galactic Council decided we were too dangerous to save. They put warships around our world and waited for us to die." She looked directly at Tova. "Your people voted for that quarantine, Ambassador. So did yours, Griel. So did almost every species in this chamber. You decided the galaxy would be safer without the Kirathi. You left us to rot." The silence now was different, uncomfortable, guilty. But one human disagreed, Ren said. One small, soft, clawless human looked at our dying world and said no. "She stole a ship. She broke through your blockade. She came to Veth Prime alone, knowing she would probably die because she believed we deserved a chance to live." Doheen watched the reactions around the chamber. Some representatives looked confused. Others looked ashamed. A few were trying to pretend they did not remember voting for the Kirathi quarantine. "You ask why we protect human doors," Ren said. "You wonder what power they hold over us. You can't understand why the mighty Kirathi would lower themselves to serve such a weak species." She turned and walked back to stand behind Do-Hyun's chair. Her hand came to rest on his shoulder, and she squeezed gently. Because she guarded ours first, the chamber remained silent. Ambassador Tova's light had dimmed to a pale blue. She seemed to be struggling to process what she had heard. "One human," she finally said. "You have bound your entire species to humanity because of one human?" "Not bound," Ren corrected. "Honored. There is a difference. And if you want to understand why, you need to hear the full story." She looked down at Do-Hyun. "Tell them about Dr. Yoon Sora. Tell them about the plague year. Tell them what one human did when the entire galaxy turned its back." Do-Hyun nodded slowly. He looked out at the thousands of faces watching him. Some hostile, some curious, some afraid. "Very well," he said. "Let me tell you about the bravest person I never had the honor of meeting." He took a deep breath and began to speak. 18 years before the council meeting, the planet Veth Prime was the heart of the Kirathi civilization. It was a harsh world of red deserts and jagged mountains, with storms that could strip flesh from bone. The Kirathi had evolved there, becoming the strongest, most dangerous species in their region of space. They had sharp claws, thick scales, and a warrior culture that valued honor and combat above all else. But none of that mattered when the Crimson Wasting arrived. No one knew where the plague came from. Some said it escaped from an old research station. Others believed it was a weapon, released by one of the many species the Kirathi had conquered over the centuries. The truth did not matter. What mattered was that it spread fast and killed faster. The first symptoms were small. A slight graying of the scales. Tiredness that would not go away. Then the fever came, burning so hot that victims would throw themselves into ice water trying to cool down. After the fever came the bleeding. The Crimson Wasting earned its name from the way victims coughed up blood in their final hours. Within 3 months, 10 million Kirathi were dead. The Galactic Council responded quickly, but not with help. Emergency sessions were called. Debates were held. And in the end, the decision was made. The Kirathi were too dangerous to risk. If the plague spread to other worlds, it could kill billions. The only safe option was quarantine. Warships from 12 different species surrounded Veth Prime. No ships were allowed in or out. Supply drops were forbidden. Medical aid was denied. The Kirathi were told to solve their own problem or die trying. Commander Voss stood on the balcony of the military headquarters in the capital city of Reth. He was old for a Kirathi. His scales faded to a dull gray that had nothing to do with the plague. He had led armies. He had conquered worlds. He had faced enemies that would make other species run screaming. But he had never felt so helpless. Behind him, in the building, hundreds of his soldiers lay dying. The medical staff had given up trying to find beds. They simply laid the sick in rows on the floor and tried to keep them comfortable. There was nothing else they could do. Commander, a young officer approached. Her name was Ren, barely 20 years old, still eager and bright-eyed despite the horror around her. Long-range sensors have detected a ship approaching the blockade. Voss did not turn around. Another council observer, probably, coming to count our dead. No, sir. It is not a council ship. The design is human. Now Voss turned. Humans were new to the galactic scene. They had only been traveling between stars for a few decades. They were known for being curious and foolish, often sticking their noses into matters that did not concern them. But what would a human ship be doing here? What are they doing? He asked. They appear to be accelerating toward the planet, sir. The blockade ships will destroy them. They have already fired warning shots. The human ship is not slowing down. Voss walked to the sensor station and watched the display. A small dot was moving through space, weaving between larger dots that represented council warships. Weapons fire streaked across the screen. But the small ship was fast and its pilot was skilled. Or crazy, possibly both. They are breaking through, Ren said, her voice filled with disbelief. Sir, they are actually breaking through the blockade. Voss watched as the human ship dove toward Veth Prime, leaving the council warships behind. It entered the atmosphere at a steep angle, flames surrounding it as it descended. Track its landing position, Voss ordered. Send a security team. I want to know who is crazy enough to break a galactic council quarantine to visit a dying world. The ship landed in a clearing outside the capital city. By the time Voss arrived with his soldiers, the vessel's ramp had already lowered. Standing at the top was a single human. She was small. Even by human standards, she seemed tiny. Her black hair was pulled back from her face, and her eyes were dark and tired. She wore a white suit that covered her entire body, with a clear helmet over her head. In her hands, she carried a metal case. "Hello," she said. Her voice was cheerful, as if she had not just committed an act that could get her imprisoned for life. "My name is Dr. Yoon Sora. I am a xenobiologist from Earth. I am here to help." Voss stared at her. Behind him, his soldiers shifted nervously. They were used to fighting enemies, not greeting them. "You should not be here," Voss said. "The Council has forbidden contact with our world." "I know," Sora said. "I broke a lot of laws getting here. I will probably go to prison when this is over. But I read the reports about your plague. I have been studying alien diseases for 15 years. I think I can help." "The Galactic Council's best doctors examined our plague from orbit," Voss said. "They said it was incurable." "They said it was difficult to cure," Sora corrected. "There's a difference. Also, they examined it from orbit. You cannot cure a disease by looking at it through a telescope. I need to be here, on the ground, working with samples and patients. You will die. The wasting kills all warm-blooded species." Sora smiled. It was a tired smile, but genuine. "Then I will work quickly." Voss studied this strange creature. She had risked everything to come to a world of monsters. She knew she would probably die. And yet she stood there, calm and determined, as if saving an alien species was simply what she did on a normal day. Why? He asked. Why would you do this? The Kirathi have never done anything for humanity. We have never even met your species before this moment. You owe us nothing. Sora thought about the question for a long moment. When she answered, her voice was soft. When I was a child, my grandmother told me a story. She said that when you see someone drowning, you do not ask if they deserve to be saved. You do not check if helping them is safe or smart. You just jump in and try to pull them out. She lifted the case in her hands. Your people are drowning, Commander. The rest of the galaxy is standing on the shore, watching. I decided to jump. She walked down the ramp and stood before Voss. The top of her head barely reached his chest. His claws could tear her apart in seconds. And yet she looked up at him without fear. Will you show me to your hospital? She asked. We have a lot of work to do. Voss looked at Ren. The young officer's eyes were wide with something he had not seen in months. Hope. Follow me, Voss said. And may whatever gods you believe in protect you, human. You are going to need it. Sora followed the Kirathi warriors into the dying city. She did not know if she could save them. She did not know if she would survive the attempt. But she knew she had to try, because that was what humans did. They jumped. Dr. Yum Sora set up her laboratory in the basement of the Kirithi Military Hospital. The room was cold and dark, originally designed as a weapons storage facility. But it had thick walls and good ventilation, which was all she needed. She filled it with equipment from her ship and samples from the sick. Every day, she woke before sunrise. Every night, she worked until her eyes could no longer focus. She ate when she remembered to eat. She slept when her body refused to stay awake any longer. The Kirathi guards, who watched her laboratory door, began to worry that she would kill herself through exhaustion before the plague could touch her. Commander Voss visited her often. His own infection was progressing slowly, his scales growing grayer each week. He knew he was dying. But watching this tiny human work so hard gave him something he had almost forgotten. Purpose. Any progress? He asked one evening, finding Sora hunched over a microscope. Some, she said without looking up. The virus is complex. It hides in the nervous system, which is why your immune systems cannot find it. I need to create something that can chase it there. How long will that take? Sora finally looked up. Her face was pale, and dark circles surrounded her eyes. I do not know. Maybe months. Maybe years. Maybe never. She saw his expression and quickly added, but I will not stop trying. I promise you that. Voss nodded. He had commanded soldiers for decades. He knew determination when he saw it. This human had it in abundance. You are strange, Dr. Yoon, he said. My soldiers have started talking about you. They call you the Small Guardian. Sora laughed softly. I am not guarding anyone. I am just a doctor. You are guarding our hope, Voss said. That is more important than guarding our bodies. The second month brought the first breakthrough. Sora discovered that human antibodies could slow the virus, even if they could not kill it. She began giving blood transfusions to the sickest patients. It was not a cure, but it bought time. Patients who should have died in days lived for weeks instead. But the process was slow, and Sora was only one person. She could not give enough blood to save everyone. She needed more time to develop a real cure. That was when the council drones arrived. Ren burst into the laboratory. One morning, her scales dark with alarm. Doctor, ships are approaching the planet. Sora looked up from her work. Council ships? Enforcement drones. Hundreds of them. They say they are coming to ensure quarantine compliance. Ren's claws flexed with anger. They are going to destroy your ship. They say it violates the quarantine by being here. Sora stood so fast her chair fell over. Her ship contained backup supplies, extra medicine, communication equipment. Without it, her work would become nearly impossible. Where are they landing? The eastern clearing, near the hospital. Sora grabbed a pulse rifle from the weapons rack near the door. She had brought it from her ship, just in case. She had never actually fired one before, but she knew the basic principles. "Doctor, what are you doing?" Ren asked. "I'm going to ask them to leave. With a weapon?" "Asking works better when you have a weapon." Sora ran through the hospital corridors, past rows of sick Kirathi who watched her with fever-bright eyes. She burst out the main entrance and sprinted toward the eastern clearing. Behind her, she could hear Ren and other Kirathi following. The drones were already there. They were tall, mechanical things built by the Council for enforcement purposes. They had no minds of their own, just programming. They surrounded Sora's ship, cutting tools ready to tear it apart. "Stop!" Sora shouted. She raised her rifle, pointing it at the nearest drone. "Leave my ship alone." The drone's optical sensor focused on her. "Human-designated Dr. Yoon Sora, you are in violation of Galactic Council quarantine. Order 7721. Your vessel is being impounded. Please stand aside." "I will not stand aside. That ship has medicine that these people need. The Kirathi are under quarantine. No medical aid is permitted. That is a stupid rule, and I am not following it." The drone processed this statement. "Your compliance is not required. The impoundment will proceed." It turned back toward the ship. Sora fired. The pulse blast hit the drone's cutting arm, destroying it. The drone spun back toward her, threat protocols activating. Other drones began to move closer, their own weapons powering up. "Doctor!" Ren arrived beside her, breathing hard. "You cannot fight all of them. Then help me." Ren stared at her. The Kirathi were warriors, yes, but these were Council drones. Fighting them meant fighting the entire Galactic Council. It could mean war, but then Ren looked at the hospital behind them. She thought of all the sick Kirathi inside. She thought of her father, who had died last week. She thought of her mother, who was still fighting the disease. She drew her weapon and stood beside SOR. Other Kirathi emerged from the hospital. Soldiers who were still healthy enough to stand. They formed a line behind the tiny human doctor, weapons raised. The drones paused. Their programming had not anticipated armed resistance. They began to calculate odds and outcomes. "Leave," Sora said. Her voice was steady, even though her hands were shaking. "Leave, or we will make you leave." The lead drone's optical sensor flickered. "This action will be reported to the Galactic Council." "Good. Tell them Dr. Yoon Sora says they can go to hell." The drones hovered for a long moment. Then, slowly, they began to rise. One by one, they flew back toward orbit, leaving the ship untouched. Sora lowered her rifle. Her legs felt weak. She had never been so scared in her entire life. Ren looked at her with new respect. "You would have died if they had attacked. Probably. Why did you do it?" Sora turned to look at the young Kirathi officer. "Because that ship has medicine. Because your people need it. Because I will not let a bunch of bureaucrats decide who lives and who dies." She walked back toward the hospital, the rifle heavy in her hands. Behind her, the Kirathi soldiers stood in silence, watching her go. "Small Guardian," one of them murmured that the name spread. By nightfall, every Kirathi on the planet knew what the human doctor had done. She had stood against the might of the Galactic Council with nothing but a rifle and pure stubbornness. And she had won. 4 months later. When Sora finally developed a working cure, the Kirathi did not celebrate alone. They celebrated with the human who had guarded them when no one else would. The small guardian had earned her name. It took 7 months of sleepless nights, failed experiments, and desperate prayers to gods Sora was not sure she believed in. But in the end, she cracked it. A combination of modified human antibodies and a synthetic compound that could chase the virus into the nervous system and destroy it. Commander Voss was one of the first to receive the treatment. He had been hours from death, his scales almost white, his body barely able to move. Ren had carried him to the medical bay herself, refusing to let anyone else touch him. Sora injected the cure with trembling hands. Then she sat beside his bed and waited. The fever broke 6 hours later. Color began returning to his scales the next day. Within a week, he was walking again. When he saw Sora standing in the doorway of his room, he did something no Kirethi commander had done in centuries. He knelt. "I owe you my life," he said. "My people owe you everything." Sora looked uncomfortable. "Please stand up. You do not owe me anything. I just did what anyone would do." "No." Voss rose, but his eyes remained fixed on her face. "Anyone would not do this. Anyone would have stayed safe at home. Anyone would have let us die. You are not anyone, Dr. Yoon. You are something more." The cure spread across Veth Prime like water on dry ground. Production facilities worked day and night. Kirethi doctors learned how to administer the treatment. Within 3 months, the death rate dropped to almost zero. But the effort had cost Sora everything. She collapsed in her laboratory on day 216. Ren found her lying on the floor, unconscious, her body finally giving out after months of abuse. She had barely eaten. She had hardly slept. She had given more blood for transfusions than was safe. Her body had simply had enough. Ren carried her to the medical bay, the same room where Voss had recovered. She laid the small human on the bed and called for the doctors. "Will she live?" Ren asked, her voice tight with fear. The doctors examined Sora carefully. "Her body is exhausted. She needs rest, food, and time. If she gets those things, she should recover." Ren nodded. She pulled a chair next to the bed and sat down. "What are you doing?" the doctor asked. "I am standing guard. Commander, there is no threat here. She stood guard for us when we were helpless. I will stand guard for her now." For 3 weeks, Ren did not leave that room except to use the bathroom. Other Kirethi brought her food. They offered to take shifts, but she refused. This was her duty, her honor. She would not share it. Sora woke on day 12. Her eyes fluttered open, and the first thing she saw was Ren's face looking down at her. "You are awake," Ren said. Her voice was rough with relief. "Good." The doctors were worried. Sora tried to sit up, but her body refused. She was so weak that even lifting her hand felt like moving a mountain. "How long?" she whispered. 12 days. "You should have rested more during your work. You pushed yourself too hard. The cure? Working perfectly. The plague is dying. You saved us." Sora closed her eyes. Tears leaked from the corners, running down her cheeks. She had done it. Against all odds, she had actually done it. "Why are you crying?" Ren asked, confused. "This is a victory." "I am happy," Sora said. "Humans cry when they are happy sometimes." "It is strange, I know. Humans are very strange." But Ren's voice was gentle. "Now sleep more. You need to heal. Why are you here? You must have other duties." Ren reached out and carefully took Sora's hand. The Kirethi's claws were sharp, but she held the human's fingers with surprising tenderness. "You stood at our door when we were dying," Ren said. "You guarded us when the galaxy abandoned us. Now I stand at your door. I guard you while you heal." She paused, seeming to struggle with words. Kirethi were not good at expressing emotions. They were warriors, trained to be hard and strong. "This is what we do now," Ren continued. You showed us something we did not understand before. You showed us that strength is not just about claws and teeth. It is about standing firm when everything tells you to run. It is about protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Sora squeezed her hand weakly. You already knew that. You are warriors. We were conquerors. There's a difference. We took what we wanted because we were strong enough to take it. We never thought about protecting anyone but ourselves. Ren's yellow eyes were bright with something that might have been tears if Kirithi could cry. You taught us a better way, and we will not forget. Sora stayed on Veth Prime for another year, training doctors and setting up medical facilities. When she finally left, she did not leave alone. Ren came with her. The High Council has made a decree, Ren explained as they boarded Sora's repaired ship. Any human, anywhere in the galaxy, may claim Kirithi protection. We will guard you as you guarded us. I did not ask for this, Sora said. You did not have to ask. That is why we give it. When Sora's ship arrived at Earth, it was followed by 3 Kirithi vessels. The humans who met them at the spaceport were terrified. The Kirithi were monsters from nightmares, after all. Deadly predators who had conquered worlds. But the Kirithi simply asked to see Sora safely home. When she was settled in her apartment, surrounded by friends and family, Ren bowed to her one last time. Call if you need us, she said. We will come. Even across the galaxy? Even across the galaxy. Even through 1,000 blockades. Even if every other species stands against us. Ren placed her clawed hand over her heart. This is our oath. Until the stars burn out. She left, and for 10 years, Sora lived a quiet life on Earth. She wrote papers about the Crimson Wasting. She taught at the medical school. She grew old, surrounded by love and peace. But she never called for help. Not once. When she died at age 52, peaceful in her sleep, the news reached Veth Prime within hours. Ren, now a High Commander, stood before the Kirithi High Council and made a request. We must honor her, she said. Properly. The council agreed. They built a statue of Sora in the central plaza of Reth, the capital city. It was 50 feet tall, carved from the hardest stone on the planet. It showed her standing with a rifle in one hand and a medical kit in the other, looking up at the sky with determination in her eyes. It was larger than any statue of any Kirithi hero in history, because she had earned it. Park Do-yoon had finished telling the story. His voice had been calm and measured throughout, but the words had struck the assembled representatives like physical blows. Many of them shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others refused to meet his eyes. Ambassador Tova of the Valashi Collective stood frozen, her crystalline body flickering with pale, troubled light. She had lived for 300 years. She remembered voting for the Kirithi quarantine. She remembered telling herself it was the logical choice, the safe choice, the right choice. Now, looking at Commander Ren standing guard behind the human diplomat, she was not so sure. This is unexpected, Tova finally said. Her voice had lost its sharp edge. We did not know the full story. You did not ask, Ren replied. Her yellow eyes swept across the chamber, meeting the gaze of every representative who had voted for her people's death. You made your decision and moved on. Our deaths would have been a footnote in your records. A problem solved through careful inaction. Ambassador Greel of the Makari slithered forward, his slug-like body leaving a trail of slime. This changes nothing. One human acted foolishly and got lucky. That does not explain why your entire species has attached itself to humanity. Foolishly? Ren's voice dropped to a dangerous growl. She broke a quarantine enforced by warships from 12 species. She stole a medical frigate. She flew through weapons fire. She faced down enforcement drones with a rifle she barely knew how to use. She worked herself nearly to death for 7 months. None of that was foolish. It was the bravest thing any of us had ever seen. Griel seemed to shrink slightly. I meant no offense. Yes, you did. You are trying to diminish what she did because it makes you uncomfortable. Because if one small, weak human could save a dying world while the rest of the galaxy watched, it makes all of you look like cowards. The silence that followed was deafening. Dahyun raised his hand slightly. Commander, please. We did not come here to fight. Ren glanced at him, then took a deep breath. Her scales shifted from dark, angry red back to their normal green. You are right. I apologize. Old wounds. Tova spoke again, her voice careful now. We understand the history, but we still do not understand why this leads to this. She gestured at the Kirathi guards. Your people serve as protectors for humans across the galaxy. You have turned yourselves into bodyguards. Why? Ren considered the question for a long moment before answering. Because we learned something from Dr. Yunsora, something we never understood before. She stepped forward, moving past Dahyun to stand at the edge of the platform. We Kirathi were always strong. We conquered because we could. We took because we wanted to. We never thought about what strength was actually for. She looked out at the assembled species. Thousands of eyes watching, waiting. Dr. Yoon showed us the truth. Real strength is not about what you can take. It is about what you can protect. She was small and soft and had no claws. But she stood in front of a dying world and said, no more. She became a wall between us and death. She was stronger than any Kirathi warrior has ever been. Ren's clawed hand came to rest on her chest, over her heart. We want to be like her. We want our strength to mean something beyond conquest. So when humans travel the stars, we travel with them. We stand at their doors because they taught us what standing at doors really means. Not just blocking enemies, but protecting hope. She turned back to look at Dayan, and her harsh face softened into something almost tender. Humans do not understand what they are, she said. They think themselves ordinary, unremarkable. They see their lack of claws and teeth and think they are weak. But they are wrong. Humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. A murmur ran through the chamber. Several representatives looked alarmed. Not dangerous because they can fight, Ren clarified. Dangerous because they care. When a human decides something matters, they become unstoppable. They will break laws. They will defy empires. They will sacrifice everything, including their own lives, for people they have never met. She pointed at the assembled representatives. Every species in this chamber has done great things when their own people were threatened. You fight for your families, your worlds, your species. That is natural. That is expected. But humans, she shook her head in wonder. Humans will die for strangers. They see suffering anywhere and they cannot look away. They have to help. It is like a sickness in their souls, except it is not a sickness. It is a gift. Dahyun spoke up, his voice quiet. Dr. Yoon was not unique. She was just the first human to reach Veth Prime. If she had failed, others would have come. That is who we are. We know this now, Ren said. That is why we guard you. Not because we owe you a debt, though we do. Not because we fear you, though we should. We guard you because you are too important to lose. Wherever humans go, they make things better. They build bridges instead of walls. They heal instead of harm. They see enemies and try to make friends. She laughed, a harsh sound. It is insane. By every law of survival, you should have died out long ago. A species that puts itself in danger to help others should not exist. And yet, here you are, spreading across the stars like a virus of kindness, infecting every species you meet with hope. Tova's light had shifted to a soft gold. You truly believe humans are this noble? Noble? Ren tilted her head. No, they are messy and complicated and often stupid. They fight among themselves and make terrible mistakes. But when it matters, when the moment comes to choose between safety and doing what is right, humans almost always choose right, even when it costs them everything. She walked back to stand behind Do-hyun, resuming her position as guard. You asked why we protect their doors. The answer is simple. Because they would protect ours. Because they did protect ours. Because as long as there are humans in the galaxy, there is someone who will jump into the water to save drowning. Strangers. She placed her clawed hand on Do-hyun's shoulder. And we have learned that there is no safer place in existence than standing beside someone like that. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, Ambassador Tova dipped her crystalline head in what might have been acknowledgement or respect. Thank you for explaining, Commander. I believe we have our answer. Do you? Ren asked. Do you truly understand? Tova's light flickered. Perhaps not completely, but we understand enough. The session ended shortly after. Representatives filed out in small groups, talking quietly among themselves. Many of them cast thoughtful glances at the human delegation as they passed. Do-hyun and Ren were among the last to leave. As they walked through the great doors of the chamber, Do-hyun looked up at his Kerethi guardian. That was quite a speech, he said. Dr. Yoon would have been embarrassed. Dr. Yoon was modest to a fault, Ren replied. It is a common human weakness. You do great things and then pretend they were not great. And you think they were great? What we do? Ren stopped walking. She turned to face the human, looking down at him with ancient eyes that had seen war and plague and the death of millions. I think you are the best thing that ever happened to the galaxy, she said simply. And I think we do not deserve you. But we will spend the rest of eternity trying to. She resumed walking, her heavy footsteps echoing through the corridor. After a moment, Do-hyun followed. Behind them, in the empty chamber, the lights slowly dimmed. But somewhere in the vast silence, a new understanding had been born. A new respect for the small, soft, clawless species that jumped into drowning worlds and refused to let go. Humanity had no idea how special they were, but the Kerethi remembered, and they would never, ever forget.